Hey, welcome back. So today is inflation day. And I don't know, like this does interest me. It's an interest I have. And whenever I realize that I'm interested in something, I have to go towards it because there are so few things that interest me. The therapist would be like, yes. So sometimes I get self-conscious because I'm like, nobody cares about inflation. Who cares? You're gonna waste a day talking about inflation or whatever. But I want to talk about it. And I want to learn more about it. I started getting kind of interested in this stuff when the pandemic happened because I'm like looking at the economy and unemployment's going up or whatever, but the stock market's still not going down, like it's going up. So like, what's happening? This is interesting. And I've just kind of been following that ever since, like what the Fed has been doing, and now employment is good, but inflation is up. What's up with that? It's kind of like textbook macroeconomics. It seems like pretty simple, which is kind of cool because sometimes when you study economics, it's like this stuff is so like, is this really how it works? Especially macroeconomics, you're like, well, there's so many factors involved. Does this even work like this? And then you see what's happening now, and you're like, oh, the textbook was right about this whole thing. So I listened to this really interesting podcast episode of the New York Times podcast or whatever, and they were talking about the 1960s and 1970s inflation. So what had happened was everybody's worst nightmare, stagflation. The worst stagflation, I think, happened in the 70s. I'm not sure if it ever got any worse. Stagflation is high inflation, but also low economic productivity, or low or high unemployment with high. The economy's bad, and also inflation is high, and they kind of feed into each other, and it's hard to get out of. And it's kind of like the worst nightmare for an economy. There are a lot of bad things that can happen to an economy, but like America, we're kind of fine, but like we're susceptible to stagflation. It can happen. And it did happen in the 70s because LBJ in the 60s increased government spending by like a lot. He was making all these programs for, well, first of all, Vietnam was very expensive. And then he had a bunch of like programs. He like declared a war on poverty, and he was like, we're gonna end poverty. Well, that didn't work. And he was spending a ton of money. With interest rates low over time, inflation increases because of this. So oh, that was the interesting thing. Stagflation kind of happens because there's a psychology of inflation that happens with the population where they know that their money is going to be worse, or like worth so much less in the future. That is bad, and obviously, so interest rates are super high. No, wait, hold on. Let me get this right. People start to ask for higher wages to cover inflation costs, so employers increase prices to cover wages. Higher wages means less jobs. So low employment, high inflation equals stagflation. That's the cycle. That's the bad cycle, I think. I guess it can happen with like whatever, but like wages, and that's how wages and prices are connected. So people are like, inflation is so freaking high, I gotta ask for more money. So employers increase prices to cover wages, but then that also decreases employment. Does that make sense? Jimmy Carter. What did I write about Jimmy Carter? Oh yeah, that was interesting. The psychology of inflation was interesting. I wish I could remember what it was. Okay, people start to build into their mindset that inflation is going to be here for like forever and it's not going away, and their money today is going to be worth like nothing tomorrow. So I don't know, people are just like depressed about it, and then they just don't do anything. Because you'd think if people knew that their money wasn't going to be worth anything tomorrow, they would spend it today and the economy would grow, right? But that's not what happens with stagflation. I think there needs to be like a really prolonged period of inflation, like 10 years, 15 years of 10% inflation or something. And then, like at first, the economy's doing good, but over time, it just affects people's mindset that like I'm not getting paid that much, and I don't have anything else to spend money on, and I can't save my money because inflation is bad, and I don't know. There's like I want to look more into it. There's an interesting psychology there that like the economy just starts to get worse. Get it. Oh. Even though inflation is high and people are spending money over a long period of time, the economy goes into a recession and inflation doesn't go down. So now you have a recession and inflation, which is like, it's like awful. That's the two worst things. People aren't making any money, and the money that they do have is depreciating really fast. I think it was at like 10% per year in the 70s. So this is all Jimmy Carter's fault, right? Well, the podcast said it was LBJ's fault, and Jimmy Carter actually solved it. So he hired a guy to be the the chair of the Fed. I almost just went right past that because I didn't even realize what I said. He was the Fairched. Fairched. This level's hard. Paul Volcker, the head of the Fed. So most of the people didn't want to hire this guy to be on the Fed because he was saying inflation has been terrible for 10 years. The only way to solve it is to increase interest rates, double interest rates. Right now interest rates are at like 8%. Let's raise them to 20%. Is that double? I don't know. I forget how percents work, but and nobody wants to do that because they know that's going to hurt the economy. Increasing interest rates hurts the economy because it incentivizes people to save. If interest rates are really high, nobody's going to want to buy a car or rent a car or rent a house because it's so much money. She was saying if you want to buy a house at 0 interest rates for like, I forget what the amount was, but it's like $500,000 for a house for 20 years or 30 years or something. At 0% interest rates, that's like $300 a month. But at 20% interest rates, it's like $1,300 a month. So if interest rates are super high, maybe you might rent or whatever. You're not going to buy a house. That's going to hurt the economy, the housing market. Nobody wants to do that because every president wants the economy to be good while they're president, because it's like, it's a thing that everybody can see. Like, oh, the economy's good, let's give credit to the president. Oh, the economy's bad, let's blame the president. But Jimmy Carter picked Paul Volcker, and the first thing Paul Volcker did was raise interest rates. So he raised it from, I think it was like 9% to 20%, which is crazy to think about, because right now they're making a huge deal. We're going to raise interest rates to 0.25% from 0%. And everybody's like, oh my god, that's so much. But it's nothing. I think the goal is like, he wants to raise it to 3% by next year or something. And everybody's like, wow, 3%, oh my god. Paul Volcker raised it from 10% to 20%. So 10% because people can't sell. Okay. So he raised the interest rates from 10 to 20%. This caused a Great Recession. Unemployment rose over 10% because people can't sell cars and houses with interest rates so high. So yeah, he caused a recession. The Great Jimmy Carter Recession was caused by Paul Volcker pretty much increasing the interest rates. But this lady on the podcast basically said most economists believe that was necessary. Like, they don't know what else could have been done. Inflation just would have been kept going out of control. Stagflation would have persisted. Without doing this. And it seems like what they did wrong was they waited too long to increase interest rates. You have to increase interest rates while the economy is good. You can't wait till it's bad, because then you'll cause a recession if you increase interest rates. But if you wait so long that you're in a stagflation economy, you kind of have no choice. You just have to take the recession and try to mitigate it as much as you can. There's nothing else to do. So that's what they're trying to do right now. They're trying to avoid a Great Recession because they see the markers for a stagflation economy coming. Right now, the economy is pretty good. And that's what the Fed chair was saying. He's like, employment is really good right now. So we believe that raising the interest rate to 3%, the economy can handle it. And from what little I know, it seems to be the right choice. Actually, I think they should raise interest rates sooner. I'm not basing that on any knowledge of anything. But it's kind of crazy that they waited so long to raise interest rates. And that's what he said. He said, like, in hindsight, we should have raised interest rates sooner. But we just didn't know that the economy would overheat this much and inflation would go up this high, this quick. So he's like, we should have done it sooner, but we didn't. See you tomorrow.